Rain was coming down in sheets as I drove home, the wipers of my aging Volvo working overtime. Manchester in November was always a grim affair, but tonight felt particularly bleak. I'm Alistair, 46, an IT specialist, and until recently I thought I had a pretty good life. A comfortable home in Didsbury, a steady job, and a wife, Bronwyn, whom I adored. Or perhaps whom I thought I adored. That's the funny thing about betrayal. It makes you question everything you thought you knew. It started subtly a few months back. Bronwyn, a primary school teacher, began taking longer at work. Extra tutoring, she'd say, or a staff meeting that ran late. I didn't think much of it at first. We'd been married for 18 years. Trust was the foundation of our relationship, or so I believed. But then came the phone calls. She'd rush out of the room to answer them, her voice dropping to a hushed whisper. When I asked who it was, she'd become evasive, saying it was just a colleague, or a parent with a concern. I'm not a naturally suspicious person, but the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach grew stronger with each passing day. I started noticing other things too. Bronwyn, who had always been meticulous about her appearance, began taking even more care. New dresses appeared in the wardrobe, expensive perfumes adorned the dressing table, and she started going to the gym 3 times a week. It was like she was trying to recapture her youth, or perhaps trying to impress someone other than me. One evening I decided to surprise Bronwyn at work. I knew she had a late parents' evening and I thought I'd bring her a takeaway coffee and a sandwich. When I arrived at the school, the car park was almost empty. I walked towards her classroom, the familiar sound of children's voices absent in the quiet building. The door was slightly ajar and I could hear voices inside. Bronwyn's and a man's. I pushed the door open and the scene that greeted me shattered my world. Bronwyn was standing close to a man, his hand resting on her back. They were laughing, their faces flushed. It wasn't just a friendly chat. There was an intimacy, a familiarity that pierced my heart like a shard of glass. The man turned around and I recognized him instantly. Gareth, a younger teacher who had joined the school last year. He was handsome, charming, and exactly the kind of man Bronwyn would have dismissed as too young a few years ago. Alistair. What a surprise, Bronwyn said, her voice tight. Gareth was just helping me with some paperwork, I repeated, my voice trembling. Is that what you call it? Gareth stepped forward, his expression apologetic. Look, Alistair, it's not what you think. Oh, really? Because it looks an awful lot like my wife is having an affair with you, I said, the words laced with venom. Bronwyn's face crumpled. Alistair, please, let's not do this here. Where do you suggest we do it, Bronwyn? In our bed. Because it seems like you've already shared that with Gareth, I retorted, the pain and anger bubbling inside me. I turned and walked out of the classroom, the image of Bronwyn and Gareth seared into my memory. I didn't wait for her to come home that night. I drove to a nearby hotel and spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over in my head. How could she do this to me? After all these years, how could she betray me in such a callous way? The next morning, I returned home to find Bronwyn waiting for me. She looked pale and drawn, her eyes red-rimmed. Alistair, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. A mistake. Did you accidentally fall into bed with him, Bronwyn? Did you accidentally exchange countless messages and phone calls? Was it all just one big, unfortunate mistake? I asked, my voice rising with each word. No, it wasn't a mistake, not exactly, she admitted, her gaze dropping to the floor. But it wasn't planned, it just happened, that's your excuse. After 18 years of marriage, you throw it all away because it just happened, I said, the disbelief washing over me. She started to cry, her body shaking with sobs. I don't know why I did it, Alistair. I was bored, I guess. I felt like I was stuck in a rut. Gareth made me feel alive again, alive. So I made you feel dead, Bronwyn. Is that what you're saying? That all these years I've been suffocating you? I asked, the pain cutting deeper with each word. No, that's not what I meant, she said, her voice choked with tears. I needed something different. You wanted different. You could have talked to me, Bronwyn. We could have tried new things, gone on adventures. But instead, you chose to betray me, to stab me in the back with a younger, more exciting man, I said, the anger consuming me. I know I hurt you, Alistair, and I'm truly sorry, but I don't want to lose you. "I still love you," she said, reaching out to touch my arm. I recoiled from her touch, the thought of her hands on Gareth making my skin crawl. "Don't touch me, Bronwyn. I don't think I can ever forgive you for this," I said, my voice cold and hard. "Please, Alistair, give me another chance." "I'll do anything to make it up to you," she pleaded, her eyes filled with desperation. "It's too late, Bronwyn. You've broken something that can't be fixed. I can't trust you anymore. I don't even think I like you anymore," I said, the words like a death knell to our marriage. I walked out of the house that day, leaving Bronwyn sobbing in the hallway. I knew that my life would never be the same again. I had lost my wife, my best friend, and the future I had always imagined. The pain was unbearable, but I knew that I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies and betrayal. I moved into a small flat in the city center and started the process of filing for divorce. Bronwyn tried to contact me repeatedly, begging me to reconsider, but I refused to speak to her. I couldn't bear to hear her voice, to see her face. The thought of her with Gareth made me sick to my stomach. My friends and family were supportive, offering words of comfort and encouragement. But no one could truly understand the depth of my pain. It was a lonely, isolating experience, like being adrift at sea with no land in sight. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, I learned more about Bronwyn's affair with Gareth. It had been going on for months, right under my nose. They had been meeting for secret lunches, exchanging intimate messages, and even spending weekends together at a hotel in the Lake District. The details were like salt in an open wound, each revelation deepening my pain and anger. One day, I received a phone call from a private investigator. I hadn't hired one, but he claimed to have information that I would find valuable. Intrigued, I agreed to meet him for a coffee. The investigator, a man named Elias, was discreet and professional. He told me that he had been hired by someone close to Bronwyn, someone who was concerned about her behavior. He then proceeded to show me a series of photographs and documents that revealed the full extent of Bronwyn's deception. It turned out that Bronwyn wasn't just having an affair with Gareth. She had also been siphoning money from our joint account, using it to pay for their secret getaways and lavish gifts for him. She had even taken out a loan in my name, forging my signature on the application. The amount was substantial, enough to leave me financially crippled for years to come. I was stunned, reeling from the shock of her betrayal. I knew she had hurt me emotionally, but I never imagined that she would stoop so low as to steal from me to commit fraud in my name. "Who hired you?" I asked Elias, my voice trembling with anger. "My client wishes to remain anonymous," he replied, his expression unreadable. "But they wanted you to know the truth about Bronwyn." I thanked Elias for his information and paid him his fee. As I walked away, I couldn't help but wonder who had hired him. Was it a friend, a family member, or someone else who had been wronged by Bronwyn? The mystery added another layer of complexity to an already tangled web. Armed with the evidence from Elias, I confronted Bronwyn's solicitor. He was initially skeptical, but when I presented him with the photographs and documents, his demeanor changed. He advised Bronwyn to settle the divorce quickly and quietly to avoid further legal trouble. Bronwyn, realizing that her deception had been exposed, agreed to my terms. She signed over her share of the house, repaid the money she had stolen, and accepted a minimal settlement. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to be free of her, to move on with my life. The divorce was finalized a few months later. It was a bittersweet moment. I was relieved to be free of Bronwyn, but I was also filled with a deep sense of loss. The woman I had loved for so long had turned out to be a stranger, a liar, and a thief. I had lost not only my wife but also my faith in love and commitment. In the aftermath of the divorce, I struggled to rebuild my life. I threw myself into my work, spending long hours at the office to distract myself from the pain. I started exercising regularly, trying to regain some sense of control over my body and mind. I also sought therapy, talking to a counselor about my feelings of anger, sadness, and betrayal. Slowly, gradually, I began to heal. I realized that Bronwyn's actions were not a reflection of my worth as a person. She had made a choice, a selfish and destructive choice, and I couldn't let her define my future. One evening, a few months after the divorce, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a picture of Bronwyn and Gareth standing outside a courthouse. They looked miserable, their faces etched with worry. Below the picture was a single sentence: "Karma is a bitch." I didn't know who had sent the message, but I suspected it was the same person who had hired Elias. Whoever it was, they had clearly taken great pleasure in Bronwyn's misfortune. Intrigued, I did some digging and discovered that Gareth had been fired from his job at the school after his affair with Bronwyn was exposed. His wife had also left him, taking their children with her. He was now working as a delivery driver, struggling to make ends meet. Bronwyn's life had also taken a turn for the worse. She had been ostracized by her friends and family, who were disgusted by her behavior. She had lost her job and was now working as a waitress in a local cafe, barely earning enough to pay her bills. It seemed that karma had indeed caught up with them. Their affair had destroyed not only my life but also their own. They had lost everything: their careers, their families, and their reputations. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that they were suffering the consequences of their actions. But I also felt a pang of sadness. It was a hollow victory, a reminder of the pain and destruction that their betrayal had caused. As time went on, I started to move on with my life. I met new people, explored new hobbies, and rediscovered my sense of self. I realized that I was stronger and more resilient than I had ever thought possible. One day, I met a woman named Isolde. She was kind, intelligent, and compassionate. We started dating, and I found myself falling in love again. It was a slow, cautious process, but with each passing day, I felt my trust in love being restored. Isolde knew about my past, about Bronwyn's betrayal, and she was incredibly understanding and supportive. She helped me to heal the remaining wounds and to believe in the possibility of a happy future. We got married a few years later, in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. It was the happiest day of my life. I had found love again, a love that was based on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. Looking back on my marriage to Bronwyn, I realized that it had been a valuable lesson. It had taught me the importance of communication, honesty, and self-respect. It had also shown me that even in the darkest of times, it is possible to find light and hope. Bronwyn's betrayal had been a devastating experience, but it had also made me a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate person. I had learned to forgive, to let go of the past, and to embrace the future with an open heart. And as I stood there, holding Isolde's hand, I knew that I had finally found my happy ending. Bronwyn was a distant memory, a chapter in my life that had closed long ago. I was ready to move forward, to build a new life with the woman I loved, a life filled with joy, laughter, and unconditional love. Years later, I received a letter. It was postmarked from a small town in France. The handwriting was familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. I opened the letter and a photograph fell out. It was a picture of Bronwyn, looking older and more weathered than I remembered. She was standing next to a man who I assumed was her new partner. They looked happy, content. The letter was brief. Bronwyn wrote that she had been thinking about me and wanted to apologize for the pain she had caused me. She said that she had finally realized the extent of her mistakes and that she was truly sorry for betraying me. She also wrote that she had found happiness in her new life and that she hoped I had found happiness too. I read the letter slowly, carefully, absorbing her words. I felt a pang of sadness, but also a sense of closure. Bronwyn had finally acknowledged her wrongdoing and she had wished me well. It was all I could have asked for. I wrote a short reply, thanking her for her apology and wishing her happiness in return. I didn't dwell on the past. I focused on the present, on the love and joy that filled my life. Bronwyn's betrayal had been a painful chapter in my life, but it was a chapter that had finally come to an end. I was ready to move on, to embrace the future with an open heart and a grateful spirit. And as I looked at Isolde, my beautiful wife, I knew that I had found my happy ending. A happy ending that would never have been possible without the lessons I had learned from the pain and betrayal of the past.